All right, welcome to the joint Murfreesboro joint meeting between the Murfreesboro City Council and the MED Pension Committee. This is April 26, 2021. This is a special session. I'm going to ask if you will bow with me, and then we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Father, I thank you for this chance that we get to come together. Lord, that you give us the wisdom to be able to deal with these issues that are before us. Lord, that you give us compassion. Lord, I thank you for the men and women who work in the city every day, the men and women who protect us every day, and just pray a hedge of protection around them. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are still operating under the governor's executive order for meetings, allowing virtual meetings. Ms. Scales-Harris, I think I heard you. Are you there?
I am.
Okay. Vice Mayor Scales-Harris is on the phone, if we'll note that she's there. All right. We've got a couple of items that are in front of us. A lot of these are complicated in nature, and I know all of us have gotten a lot of information, and we've been dealing with some of this for the last many years. But Craig, I'm going to need you to call the MED Pension Committee to order.
And we'll call to order the MED Pension Committee.
All right. So we have both bodies that are now in session. To start, our HR department has done quite a bit of work in auditing work. So I think it's good before we start with what we're going to talk about on the recommendations that have come to us from the pension committee, that our HR department give us a briefing on, or not a briefing, but just let us know what you found and the processes that you've gone through. And when I say the HR department, it's Pam Russell and Chris McFarland have put a lot of hours into working through this. Pam.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members.
Hey, Pam, before you get going, council members, I want to, and committee members, if y'all have questions, go ahead while they're presenting and ask the question. So if something hits you that you want to ask a question, this is informal. Let's go ahead and ask those questions just because of the complicated issues we're dealing with. So Pam, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. And Chris McFarland may answer some of those questions.
Okay.
So I'd like to start by going through a timeline to recap the transition between the MED pension from MED to the city. On July 14, 2020, HR met with MED in person to go over specific questions we had about the pension plan and in the process that they used for payment authorization. I also needed to find out how many employee files and HR documents would need to be boxed up and sent to HR. So Gina showed me the files, said they boxed them up, but wanted to go through them first and clean out things that we didn't need. After a brief discussion, I left the meeting. Chris stayed to go over the pension process with Lori and PD. Chris made them aware that she was responsible for the actual calculations of the city's pension applications and had reviewed MED's pension plan and had several questions. Lori was to go over the process with Chris during this meeting, but didn't, stating she had another meeting to get to. They agreed the city and MED would work side by side on the next application that came in because the city was now the plan administrators. Time was also of the essence because 7 active employees were eligible to retire on July 1, 2020. In the meantime, emails were exchanged between HR and MED over the next few weeks, trying to get the actual employee files moved to the city. They were busy meeting and trying to get everyone onboarded with MTE and didn't have time to get to it. During these exchanges, I had asked that the files stay intact and nothing be removed. We were able to pick up the termed employees on July 22nd, and then we got the active employees about a week or two later. On July 27th, this was the day before the City and MED Pension Committee meeting, MED sent 7 completed MED pension applications to HR for processing payment. Unbeknownst to HR, one of the 7 applications we received included an MED participant who had already been processed and sent to Pinnacle Bank for payment. This was just 2 days after the July 16th meeting, where we had agreed that the city and MED would work side by side on the next application to be processed. It wasn't until September 25th, when HR received the August Pinnacle Bank statement, that we discovered MED had already sent that pension for payment. Again, this was after the sale. We shared the information with legal, contacted Pinnacle Bank to suspend the payments until they received a corrected copy. The next day, on July 28th, we had the actual MED Pension Committee meeting. In that meeting, there was much talk about the MED separation date and some of the committee believing that the date should be July 1. At the time, we didn't see any significance in that date. After the pension meeting, HR asked MED more questions via email regarding the high-five salary computations when raises were issued by MED in order to audit the 7 applications that we received. Based on the plan document language, we realized that the high-five wages reported were not correct. The plan clearly states participants must work at least 1,000 hours in the plan year to receive credit for the full year. Basically, if you take leave or work half a year, you get credit for the full year. The 7 applications we received were all given a full year's credit, even though they hadn't worked one day in that plan year, which began January 1, 2020 and ends June 30, 2021. After realizing this, HR met with legal, called Michael Guyton of Findlay, he's the actuary for MED and for the city, to seek clarification on the high-five salary process. Since the city was interpreting the plan correctly, we updated the 7 pension applications, sent them out to the participants for signature, and to return to process payments. HR also felt it prudent to audit the rest of the pension files for accuracy. In that audit, we discovered a few things. One, between 1990 and 2005, the pensions were being applied correctly according to the plan language. Between 2006 and 2016, more than half of the pensions were calculated correctly, with the first noticeable deviation from the plan occurring with a general manager who retired on the first day of the new plan year, but received credit for the full year.
So I want to make sure, so the pension was done correctly up until 2006?
Correct.
Okay, and what happened in 2006?
There was a deviation from the plan, and there was a general manager who had retired on the first day of the new plan year. And so they didn't take vacation, or they didn't work at least till December 23rd to receive credit for the full year.
Who signed that pension form?
I don't have the pension in front of me. I think was, Chris, do you have that in front of you?
I do. Or PD minor.
Okay.
Okay. It wasn't until 2017 that the pensions were consistently, but not always, being calculated incorrectly. Many of the employees who worked or took one-day leave in July and received credit for the full year. Most of these employees could have used available sick and vacation to get the 1,000 hours needed. Instead, many were paid out in lump sums for their sick and vacation, some upwards of $70,000 to $90,000 each. They also received the benefit of six additional months of pension benefit at the higher rate than earned. Interesting enough, the last retiree calculated, who was retired January 1, 2020, was calculated correctly according to the plan. MED had documents in the employee's file letting them know that they needed to work or take leave through the end of the year to reach their 1,000 hours needed to gain credit for the next year. After the audit, HR's conclusion was that the 2 MED employees that calculated the pensions had a good understanding of the plan and the 1,000 hours needed to receive credit for the next year, and did so on most of the applications. There might be reasons for those inaccuracies, but HR was unable to find any documents to support that in the files that we received.
All right.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Tucker? And then, or not Ms. Tucker, Ms. Russell, I think we were going to ask for Mr. Tucker to come up and sort of talk about where we are, and then we may want to get into this a little further. I've got several questions I want to ask.
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council, members of the MED Pension Committee. I've already addressed the items I'm going to speak about with both bodies separately, addressed them with the City Council and executive session in early January, and then with the Pension Committee at its meeting in March. Also, actually, with the pension committee, it's meeting in July of 2020. There are two amendments that staff is presenting to City Council for approval this evening. Both of those amendments have already been approved by the pension committee. Want to just outline what those are. They're here in the documents that are before you, and then go into, with respect to the second amendment, why that amendment is vital to the plan. So with respect to the First Amendment, these are amendments, and these are behind tab 2 of your folder. These were amendments that were approved by the Pension Committee in July of 2020, shortly after the sale of MED to Middle Tennessee Electric. Most of these amendments are just necessitated by the fact that the City of Murfreesboro is assuming the administration of the MED pension plan as opposed to MED and the Power Board itself. Some of them also includes a couple of updates to ensure compliance with current law. Those are just changes in the law that occurred between the last time MED updated its pension plan and the present. And finally, there are there are three that incorporate prior amendments approved by the MED Pension Board between July 2015 and July 2020. Those amendments were attached basically as appendices to the pension plan. This amendment is just pulling them into the body of the text of the plan. There are two, with respect to that last set of amendments, if you go to 5.4 in death benefits under the proposed text, so that's the third page. Lori Williams pointed out to me today two things that were actually incorrect in the original amendment passed or adopted by the MED Pension Committee and the Power Board. They're just typos, but for the record, I'm just going to highlight them here. In 5.4b, the last line before you get to the numbered paragraphs, the words "the beneficiary" appear twice in succession, so we'll delete one of those. And then in B, subsection 2, it says, second line, it says, 1 share for each living child who predeceases the participant with living descendants. It should read 1 share for each child who predeceases the participant with living descendants. So with that, those changes, those are all the comments I have on the First Amendment. Happy to answer any that whether Pension Committee or Council may have.
And committee, if y'all have questions too, y'all feel free to. I know, Ross, you were the chairman of the Pension Committee with MED, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
For a portion of this time.
sure. Okay, Adam?
Okay, I wasn't sure if you wanted to, if
I think we
Council wanted to vote on those now or
I
wait.
think we probably will want to discuss before we vote, or do we want to vote?
I mean, I think one of the things we're going to need to kind of talk about is if we want to go through kind of all the information for both amendments and then kind of circle back and then approve them one by one, or do we want to just do Amendment 1 and vote on it? I don't care either way, frankly. I mean, I guess there's a part of me that would just say, let's get all the way through all the information, and then we can come back and get them knocked out one by one, but I don't really care all that much if everybody wants to get it knocked out now.
Let's go ahead and talk about it, or go to the next one, and then we can, if there's any questions, we can do it all at one time.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So the Second Amendment is, again, one that's already been approved by the Pension Committee, and it is a self-correction to the MED pension plan required to address past administration of the plan that did not align with the language and the text of the plan document itself. And as a result of that past administration, benefits were calculated in a manner that was inconsistent with the requirements of the plan, I will emphasize that in all instances, the error was, and this is important, the error was to the benefit of employees. So the miscalculation inured to the benefit of employees. However, that creates a legal issue because you have a pension plan that's a qualified tax-exempt plan under the Internal Revenue Code and the Internal Revenue Service regulations that was administered in a manner that's inconsistent with the plan language. That creates legal issues as far as the IRS is concerned and in terms of the plan continuing to maintain its qualified status. Before I go any farther, what's the importance of qualified status? The importance of qualified status is that when the pension plan is qualified, the sponsor, here the city, would not have the earnings on the assets of the pension trust are not subjected to tax. Similarly, the accrual of benefits for individual employees are not taxable to the employees. So it's very important to maintain that qualified status for a pension plan because it has tax consequences both for the employer and for the employee beneficiary. So given that there was too generous a benefit paid due to this, in the way that the plan was administered, we reached out to outside legal counsel and in turn reached out to an actuary, Cowden and Associates, and to figure out what the best path forward was. And basically there were two paths. You either have to claw back the overpayments and either through a clawback or contributions by the plan sponsor, put the plan back in the position it would have been but for the overpayments. Alternatively, you can amend the plan language so that the plan language, the amended plan language, aligns with the past administration. And that is exactly what has been our recommendation, my recommendation, the recommendation of outside legal counsel, the recommendation of the actuary is to do that second amendment where it is taking past practice and changing the language of the plan so that the plan language aligns with past practice.
Can I stop you and ask a question real quick? Just kind
Sure.
of get to some basics on this, just so I make sure I understand, because there are several things going on here, and I want to make sure I'm sort of keeping them in their correct columns, okay?
Yes.
So, as it relates to the administration paying out too much in benefits.
Yes.
First of all, I think first of all, I want to know, is that part of what we were talking about in that 2005, 6, 7 range? Did it change at that point, or is this something that has been being done since the beginning of time, 1950, whatever? They've calculated it wrong ever since.
Sure, and I thank you for asking that question because it's another point that I wanted to clarify. When I made this presentation to the pension committee, I made a statement, I don't remember my exact words, but at least suggested that this practice of overpayments had been going on for 30 plus years. That was not a precise or accurate statement by me. What it should be, what I meant to say was that this proposed plan amendment brings under the umbrella all of the calculations for the past 30 years. It makes those right. However, to the mayor's point, or maybe it was to Pam's point earlier, the first deviation in terms that we've been talking about and that the actuaries noticed and uncovered and that HR uncovered seemed to start occurring around 2006, and then they picked up in more recent years.
Mr. Minet's here. PD, do you remember why that we made that change with that one individual in 2006?
I would tell you that nothing changed, that the plan's been administered the same way from day one. It predates me. The way it was being done back in the early 80s when they established this current plan that we're under.
So, Mr. Minor,
I've heard that anything changed.
our staff went all the way back to 1990 when the first person retired and audited every employee file, and they were all done correctly prior to that one individual retiring in 2006. And then in 2006, they were pretty much done correctly after that one individual until 2017, mid-2017, when conveniently the sale of MED was being talked about, and then every person who retired after the sale was being talked about, they started being figured incorrectly after that. Am I missing that, Ms. Russell and Ms. McFarland?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, the question I have is, why was it done correctly for so many years and then incorrectly? In the part that after going through this, there's some employees that retired that were allowed to get cash buyouts on their sick and vacation time and didn't have to use their vacation and sick time to accrue that extra plan year. So we allowed, in the audit that they've done, there were a few people who got their cash buyouts, and then they were allowed to get that high five without working that 1,000 hours in the next year. But then some employees, we made them run out their sick and vacation time, so they lost that cash payout in advance to be able to get to that next plan year. So the information's here. So, my question is just...
Mayor, you have the option to sell your sick leave and vacation lump sum, or you can run it out toward retirement. In a lot of cases, if you've already got your 30 years, our plan only allowed payment for up to 30 years. If you've already got 30 years, you wouldn't want to run it out. But if you've got 28 years or 29 years and you can run that out, get another plan year, another 2% towards your pension benefit, it behooves you to do that.
I think you're correct, but in this...
A lot of people, it was not a benefit. There's no reason to run it now.
Ms. McFarland, you've looked at these. Can you sort of explain those situations?
I do agree with that statement that PD Minot just made. If you had 30 years, then obviously the payout is, what you would be interested in. But the same people that received the payout received a plan year application that they did not work or use benefit hours 1,000 hours. And so their pension, their last plan year was not a qualified plan year.
So just to clarify, when they calculated the high five, they used a year, a salary on the first day of a year in which they didn't work 1,000 hours.
Correct.
Okay, and that's consistent with what Cowan found when they went through all the files as well.
That's exactly correct.
That's been consistent. That did not change. That was the way it was being done from the early 80s forward.
I think what we're hearing here, I'm struggling with this a little bit, just from the standpoint of, we've had people go through it, and they're saying there's change, and he's saying there's no change since 1980. Can you elaborate a little bit on, tell us what the change is? What changed specifically so that we can get this cleared up?
And what prompted it to change back?
Well, I don't know, we'll ever know that.
One way and then flip back the other way.
Okay, what are you saying changed, Mr.
Well,
Tucker?
if this is-
What
this is-
deviated? What was
This
the
is getting
deviation?
more into what the HR's work was, but if,
So Ms. McFarland or Ms. Russell, I don't know who wants to answer that, Chris or
It appears from the data that we reviewed and all of the files that we reviewed, I agree with what PD Minot is saying in that historically, employees would not retire until January or February. And in essence, they were all correct by the fact that they did that. The plan year starts July 1, and so by not retiring, consistently, employees did not retire until like January and February, and they did have their 1,000 hours. So they could get a payout, they could go ahead and retire, and they could get credit for that last plan year. And so the deviation occurs when you allow someone to get credit for a full plan year when they only maybe worked one day or a week or used benefit hours for one day.
So what we've heard in this is that what we've heard, from employees and retiring employees, and I'm gonna try to get this to the level of what we've been talking about or had been talking about up to the few months ago, was as it relates to the sale of MED and, whether it's June 30th and 23 hours, 59 minutes, 59.9 seconds, or July 1st and 1 second, whatever. The plan document, it says the plan year starts July 1st, correct?
It does.
Which means you got to have worked 1,000 hours in that plan year,
Yes.
which means we would have, the year that started July 1st of 2019
Right.
should count.
It should. It
And-
should.
And
It
that-
didn't.
in the amendment.
It
that
did
we're
not
doing-
count for employees that worked 1,000 hours.
For the
That would be
Employees that worked
calculated in their
1,000
high five.
hours in that time frame. The amendment that we're talking about tonight makes that so. Is that correct? It just doesn't include the January 1 raise, which is what we all were told by the employees. Well, no, the way that it's always been done for 30 years is that that January 1 raise should be counted in our high five. And it didn't because of this date of June 30th versus July 1st. But I don't see how that could be.
One day different in the sale doesn't matter for this plan language because you still have not accomplished the 1,000 hours.
Right.
So,
I was under the understanding that we didn't get credit for the 2019-2020 plan year, because that's what was turned in. And we were told that we didn't get credit because we weren't working July 1st of the 2020 year. That's what we were told. And none of this stuff was ever discussed with the pension board that Pam brought up.
Well, yeah, they,
There's a lot of detail that I
This
have
is
not
it.
heard.
yeah, I mean, I think they went through from the time that the pension board met and audited all the files just because, I mean, I think that's what Chris, why don't you tell them the process that you've gone through?
the process that we went through, we pulled every active retiree file and validated, did they work the 1,000 hours? We looked at their high five compensation, did it match the wage statements? They have wage statements in their file for every single year when they get their raises. Did it match that? And then we've documented that. And then that work was done prior to it being released over to Cowden. Cowden did their own work, and they came to the same conclusion.
But that paperwork those 7 turned in, and I'm one of them, we didn't include that last year.
I did.
And
Yeah,
Did.
I did.
yeah,
It
Laura.
wasn't.
yes, she did, but y'all didn't when you calculated, and it's because they said we did not, the plan states, a plan year is from June 30th to July 1st. So we worked that whole plan year.
The plan year.
I mean, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. It's from July 1st to June 30th, and we worked the whole plan year, and we were told we didn't get credit for it. It's because we weren't employed July 1st of 2020. No, you got, the plan was Well, now, recalculated. we got credit for the 1,000 hours, but we didn't get credit for the top 5 of the last The 10. top 5 that included 2019 and
And
5 years back, you got credit for.
Right.
So Michael, this is where we're getting, I want to make
Yes.
sure we're square on this, okay? I don't want to be
This
arguing.
part's not hard to
I'm trying figure
calculate. It's not hard to calculate. I hand calculate it. It's the part, if you believe in survivor benefits, all that I can't calculate.
Yeah, I get that too. But what I've always just heard from employees, I mean, about this, and we got some emails, and it sounded to me like it had more to do with getting the January 1st, 2020 through June 30th pay number includable as that's your highest 5 if you got let's just say, for example, say you got a raise each of the last 5 years. So your last year of work would have been July 1st of 2019 to June 30th of 2020.
We didn't get credit for that.
Hold on just a second.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Saying we didn't get credit, what I was hearing that wasn't given credit was the January 1st raise of 2020. Not that we weren't getting credit for the number as of July 1st of 2019.
Correct.
But that you were using July 1st of 2019, just not the January 1st of 2020 pay raise that you got.
Right,
because
the plan requires the use of the salary on the first day of the plan year.
Right.
So your understanding is you don't even get to use in your high five the July 1st of 2019 number?
From 2019 to June 30th of 2020, that was not included.
Why it was.
It was not included in the calculations.
Well,
Well,
can I explain
saying it is?
Can I
Yeah,
explain
Does
it?
Ms.
Well,
Now, if you worked 1,000 hours, you got credit for that year, but the top 5, it was not included.
Well, let Ms. Farland.
All right, go ahead, I'm sorry.
She calculated it.
Good, we're figuring this out, man, we gotta get this square.
To qualify for a plan year, the document says that the salary that you make on July 1 is the number. And so that's the number for the whole plan year. And so to say that the salary that is earned on the last day of the plan year wasn't considered is not true. It just doesn't change 7-1 number. It just doesn't
That's not
change
what
it.
he's saying. He's saying that in his high five calculation, that his 5th year, so to speak, the highest year that started July 1st, even at the July 1st of 2019, his salary as of July 1st of 2019 was not considered. His last date, he's saying his last year date was July 1st of 2018,
No.
which is correct.
Is that not true, Adam?
The 5 July 1st salary amounts that are included in anyone who was working with MED on June 30th, 2020 are July 1st, 2019, July 1st, 2018, July 1st, 2017,
That's
July.
without the amendment.
That's
So we worked
without
a whole year
And the
and then get
amendment does
credit.
not change that.
So
Right.
the amendment does not change that?
It does not change that. The amendment does not bring July 1st, 2020 into play.
No, July 1st of 2019.
Yes, so.
Already there.
It's already included.
Wait a second. July 1st of 2019 is already part of his high five calculation?
Yes.
Or it is not?
Yes.
Okay, why do you think it's not?
I calculated, it wasn't. Laura, you,
I think in the 2019 was.
Yeah, and I think the
Your June
question has
30th,
been there, the
2000.
question has
we worked
been,
a whole year. We worked from July 1st of 2019 to June 30th of 2020, and
that's-
we didn't get that
She's
on the
saying
top
that's
5.
included.
that's included. I think
Yeah.
the question, Jackie, has been that the assumption of getting paid what you were making on July 1st, 2020 is included in,
Adam and I had that discussion after the first meeting,
Yeah.
and we were going to have another meeting and bring it up and discuss it, and we never got to have the next meeting.
Look, you could have never worked 1,000 hours July 1st of 2020. There is no way July 1st of 2020 would have ever
No,
counted.
we're not trying to count that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Can we make certain that July 1st of 2019
Counts.
pay is counted in the high five? We just need to make sure that's either happening in these calculations or it is not. Am I correct in understanding when there was a deviation on some of the person that sent us a whole bunch of emails? My understanding in those emails was that it was the January pay rate, which was not included, which included the January raise. Okay, so as far as deviations go, why was anybody ever able to retire in July or August or September, and when they didn't have 1,000 hours in that plan year, why were they ever able to use the January pay raise?
Okay, you were given because you retired, let's say you retire on August 1st. So your high five would have been that previous month before July 1st and then the 4 years prior. But you didn't have to work, you didn't work 1,000 hours to get another plan year. But because you replied on August 1st, your July 1st rate was included. But one point I would like,
The plan document
what the
says.
plan document says.
Document says.
That's why we're having a problem here,
Yeah,
is that, how I'm wondering here is that what the deviation is from the plan document? The plan document is pretty clear. Yeah, I did this stuff on my own too, way back when. I mean, months ago, before, when we very first started getting emails about this. I sat down with Aaron and Craig was there. We were like looking through them, literally reading the plan document, trying to figure it out. And I just couldn't come up with it. So I just want to make sure
I think that's,
we're kind of going,
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's the thing after going through what's in our packet, that PD, when we'll call on you and have you come up to the podium. But when you go through this, it was right since 1990, except for one instance, and I'm not getting into that instance, but that individual who retired in 2006 was given a full plan year and didn't work a day in that plan year. So I don't know how that happened, but it did. And there's no documentation in the file on payouts or any of that information. It's just empty. So, but then in the part, I mean, you know, Lori's a CPA, you're the controller and CFO, PD's a controller and the CFO, and then you go in here, and I just want to know who made the determination on a plan document, let me finish, that we legally can't change the plan document. I mean, we don't get to have the decision to say, you know, I really like this individual, they've been a great employee.
So we'd had to work to July.
They're retiring 3 or 4 weeks early, but they don't have the plan, they don't have the sick and vacation time to be able to work that out, but we're going to go ahead and give them that year on their high five. And that happened in numerous occasions, and there's one individual that retired in 18 and 19, one individual retired in 18, one individual retired in 19, and the individual that retired in 18, there was a $77,000 cash payout in 18, and then in 2019, the next person that retired, we told that individual, nah, you can't use your sick and vacation time, you got to work that out to be able to get in that plan year. And that person who required in 18, we gave them their plan year without working 1,000 hours. The next person said, no, you got to work the 1,000 hours or you can use sick or vacation time. So any which way you look at it, however it was done in the 80s or 90s, it ain't right. It's not right when it started. This happened in 2017. And the only thing that I can look at, and I'll call a spade, it was when the negotiations were going on with the electric department. And it all started getting figured highly. There was a salary study that occurred during that time where I think Ms. Russell saw that the salaries jumped up. I mean, Ross, did that ever come to y'all at the board to change that?
No.
So somebody did it, and makes no sense to me.
Could I just, this goes back to a little prior question. It might be helpful to council members and to Mr. Lalande's question about what changed. If you go to tab 4, it'll be, and this is, I'm stepping a little bit on HR's work, so I'm not going to take credit for the work, but I'm going to use this as an illustration. If you start, it's page 1, start on page 1 of 5, and if you go through the date of termination and the pension start dates, which are the second and third columns, and then the third column says, did the person work 1,000 hours? If you go all the way through the first page, with the exception of number 9, which is something not related to this issue, you will see all those yeses, and where there's a yes, that means a person worked 1,000 hours, and you see that the retirement is in, or date of termination, pension start date, is sometime in the first half of the calendar year or the second half of the pension year.
Right.
So they've worked 1,000 hours. When you starting in 18, number 18, and then moving forward, if you look at all of those shaded rows, those people, their date of termination is going to be in the first 6 months of the plan year. So between July and December. If you're working 40 hours a week, you have to work to roughly December 23rd to hit 1,000 hours. December 20th, maybe. And so something changed in terms of people retiring in the first half of a plan year, the second half of a calendar year.
And so for clarification from Ms. McFarland, the ones that he's talking about that have the Ys on the worked 1,000 hours, that is associated with they worked 1,000 hours in the 5th year of their high five, basically. I mean, that was included. Is that
Yes.
Is that
So
correct?
Their 5th year, that plan year was eligible because they did work 1,000 hours.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Because That's critical to what we're talking about, right? I mean,
It is.
And the 1,000 hours is different in the plan language for purposes of calculating average monthly compensation, your high five, and the 1,000 hours for purposes of calculating years of service.
both are that is applicable to both of those, to be sure?
Yes, and so the 1,000 hours for a year of service is, you get 2% of your salary for each year of service, up to a maximum of 30 or 60%. And there's no issue with the years of service calculations based on the actuarial investigation.
Keep going, Adam.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, to get back to the amendment number 2 to the pension plan.
Adam, are you going to keep going? Or you want?
Sorry, thank you. And then you see, after 2006, you see more and more people retiring in the first half of a plan year, the second half of a calendar year, until starting mid-2017, most of them are retiring in the first half of a plan year, the second half of a calendar year, between July and December. So, I mean, it's hard to figure out exactly what's happening from this, but there is definitely, that's a pattern that comes out.
Lori, do you know what changed back then in 2017?
I don't understand why people started retiring at different times, but the one thing I do want to state is in the MED history of the pension calculations, no employee or management has ever figured the benefits. It's always been done by the actuary. And we send them the date the person was hired, their retirement date, and their high five. We have never calculated these, so whatever changed, and where it says, you know, I did bring it to Adam's attention on the amendment too, where it said the management calculations, we've never calculated them.
But so who calculated the high five?
The actuaries from the census that was sent each year.
Is that Michael Guyton?
No, well,
Yes.
yeah, it was Michael Guyton, but who identifies the 5 that qualifies for the plan?
They do.
Fills out the form. Okay,
They
so the
figure that, they
employee-
fill that out.
The employee fills out a form and then certifies that it's correct or not correct, correct?
The actuary fills that out.
The application, and then the employee signs it?
Yes,
And then you signed it when you were CFO, and then PD signed it when he is CFO, that authorized payments based on that information that was on there. And you were CFO at the time when you signed that, correct?
right.
So-
But I couldn't figure, like Jackie said earlier, other than the straight line, I couldn't figure the 50%, 75% survival, so I was relying,
Now, did you ever read the plan document?
no, I did not.
You never read the plan document. Did you read the audits? You're CFO. I assumed you read the audits every year.
The last 5 years,
Because we didn't know it was an issue.
I mean,
City-owned asset, we sold it and we're unaware.
But yeah, I don't.
Somebody has to
I mean-
approve it though, too.
Somebody has to approve it. Somebody
Well,
has
apparently-
responsibility as
You just don't sign a
CFO.
document without proving something.
We approved it.
hey,
No, we
the
didn't approve.
errors that I found today and those
No, that's
were approved
incorrect.
by a previous pension board.
You are incorrect.
You know, so apparently no one had read that to see that
So-
you couldn't have a living child that had predeceased you.
But we're not
You know,
talking-
I mean,
we're
the
not-
last
we're not-
5 years, we did good, Mr. Tyndall, to get by. I mean, I've taken this over during this time.
So look, beyond who calculated, if we just make the assumption that Michael Guyton has calculated that there was never an employee of MED ever involved in any calculations, I mean, one thing that I can tell you that I'm satisfied, frankly, I'll tell you, I'm satisfied from the standpoint if that's the way we go with this, we say, all right, well, we're gonna go after Michael Guyton for doing this incorrectly. I mean, the numbers that we saw was gonna be somewhere close to $1 million. And even though Mr. Tucker, I think it was, that brought it up, that said these are all been to the benefit of the employees. That has all been to the detriment of the ratepayer. The ratepayer has had to pay more money in rate in order to fund up a pension that is being overpaid to the employees because of decisions that were made to pay people more money than was actually supposed to be paid to them. That number we saw from Cowden looked like it's gonna be a total of about $900,000, if I remember that
Well,
number
it's
right.
about 460 for the correction.
But that's only, one of them was going backwards. We gotta also
Yeah, they're
account
going-
for 600 that's
Right.
already been paid too much. So we got 460 for the future. There was a piece that we've already paid out too much for the people who've already retired.
Right, that's the
There's
460.
also another 460 that we got to amend for the people who are yet to retire. Isn't that,
Well, that would be only if you operate outside the plan and recognize the
that's-
7/1/2020 salary. Would there be that 900?
No, that's not correct.
that was to get us to the 7119 number.
You know, there are two, yeah.
I guess the point is, everybody needs to understand that to the benefit of the employee sounds really good, and that's, nothing that anybody ever wants to say, that's a terrible thing. But everybody also needs to understand that money just didn't come from nowhere. And that it did come from ratepayers, and that they have overfunded the plan because some people have been treated differently than others with the exact same plan document. That's just a fact. So whoever calculated, however it got calculated, that's where we're at right now. Looking at this list, what I can tell you too, even though we can say Michael Guyton, the actuaries have done this, one thing that is 100% certainty, there are a lot of employees who had been told by other employees that the July 1st date matters. We don't need to look around on that and act like that hadn't happened, because it has happened, and it's been told to me a bunch too. And so what I've been trying to do is figure out, well, look, if there's some reasonable expectation that the employee should be getting this, some higher number, they should be included January 1st number. Well, how can we back that up? We got to go back, and I want to ask a specific question here at the end of all this is, we all need to clarify whether or not we're going to include the January 1st number in any way, shape, or form into this discussion.
I don't think,
Thinking in my brain that the only way to do that is now having to change what the plan year is to January 1st and go back for everybody who's ever retired from MED and pay them up to whatever their high five number would have been. You got to think about the people who retired in April. Before they were ever told, before this shift ever happened, that if you work till July 1st, you get your next high five. Well, they didn't know, so they just went ahead and retired in April and didn't get the benefit. And they, every one of you ask them today, they say, well, yeah, I'd work the extra 6 weeks to get a whole another year in my high five, but that wasn't, I wasn't eligible for that. So I'm also trying to figure out, are we gonna have to go back to the people that were before 2005? If we amend it to fix the people since 2005, do we have to fix it for the people who we treated differently before 2005?
well, the people who in 2005 though were treated correctly.
Yeah,
right?
they're all fine.
So I
We
think,
amend the plan, I'm saying.
well, we're having to amend the plan. I mean, let's be clear. We're amending the plan because it was handled incorrectly. So we're fixing where people have been paying more than what they're supposed to be on the plan. And we all as a council said we did not want to punish the employee. So, I mean, I don't think there's any way around that. There's some people that were paid one in 2006 and some in 2017 that got an added benefit that somebody, I cannot imagine that Michael Geithner said, I'm going to do something outside of what the plan calls. I mean, I cannot imagine that they would say that, but people got paid more than what they were supposed to get paid. And so there's no way around that. And I wish Michael Geithner were here. Has he made a mistake on our city plan before?
Well, I calculate our annuities, and
Yeah,
so,
and so Lori, I appreciate this is the way it's always been done, but I mean, if I figure my taxes incorrectly, I guarantee you, if the government gives me too much money, they're not going to say, hey, Mr. McFarland, you just keep that. they're not going to do that. It was handled incorrectly. And so we're here fixing that, trying to make sure that we don't hurt any employees who got a benefit that they didn't get. And so, and I want to be clear too, to the guys who are sitting out there and the rank and file who are out there, the majority of the benefit that you look at these numbers, it ain't the rank and file that's getting hurt on this. The majority of people who are getting the windfall on this are all the management. That's the people who are getting the big pays on this. I think in some case, we were showing a cash buyout that if we paid the July number, it was $94,000 to one individual. That's who's getting the benefit on it. So it's extremely frustrating.
Could I just?
Yes, Chris. I'm sorry, Chris.
Chris, you can go ahead.
I just wanted to add one thing, like so the actuary does calculate the pension, but it comes back to MED. And so when it comes back, and right now it comes back to me. And so the first thing that I do when it comes back to me is I have the file, and I'm verifying that the high five plan years that are identified in this packet are the correct years. And then I sign the authorization. I don't ever sign the authorization until I verify that. Because they could make a mistake.
Yeah, and that was my.
PD, do you have you want to come to the podium, bud?
And I think this could help somewhat. I think one of the, and I think maybe when Chris talks about if you work July 1, and then you need to work 1,000 plan hours to get that credit. Every year since this plan's been in existence, they ask us for a census at first day of the plan year. And we gave them that. What's the salary at the first day of the plan year? Well, that became, for instance, July 1, if we'd worked July 1, 21, or 20, then that would have been our high five for 2020, not 2019.
That's not what the plan says, PD. It says you have to work 1,000 hours in the plan year.
That's the interpretation that the board, the pension committee, somebody took when they started this. And it's been done that way ever since. I don't think it changed in 20.
It hasn't
It
been.
hasn't, PD.
People might have retired at a different time, but pretty much anybody that worked beyond, because they worked a full year, and we worked a full year in 2020. So if we were still in existence,
PD, you didn't work a full year in 2020.
we worked a full pension year in 2020.
How?
Pension year runs from July 1 to June 30.
19.
Are you talking about 19 or 20?
I'm talking about the plan, June 30th, 2020. That was the end of a plan year, and we worked that whole year.
Yep.
It's a 20
I mean,
year, but it's
you
a
know.
plan year.
And that's been included.
Yeah.
So,
But,
19 to 20.
but
Yeah.
we have historically, and it goes back 40 years ago, to whatever our census was then became one of our high five going backwards, not going forwards.
I got a question.
Because that is what we earned in that year, included any raises we got in that year.
I got a simple question. Because this really answers the whole thing. If you were always giving them the census information with the first day of the plan year, how did any January raises ever get included when they hadn't worked, when that's not the first day of the plan year?
Well, the first day of the plan year would have picked up a January raise from the previous year.
But you realize you had to work 1,000
But
hours.
if anybody went past July 1 and retired, whether it be in the first 6 months or the latter 6 months, any raise you got during that time would not have affected your high five. You know, I mean.
Like the January raise.
Like if I went past July 1 and I got a raise in October 1, I would have had to work all the way past July 1 of the following year to get that raise in my high five. And that's the way it's always been applied.
So
I think you can, I haven't had the benefit of seeing all this data y'all are looking at, but I don't believe there was a change at a certain point in time, and it didn't flip back because of the merger talks.
when did it go from you really got the best benefit of your high five if you retired the first couple of months of the calendar year to you get the best benefit of your high five if you work until July 1st or later?
That's been going on 40 years.
July 1st was always kind of like that was always the number. If you,
At one time, it was August 1st, and it was changed to July 1.
Right.
They did that for the auditors, so we could get the audit closed a little quicker.
Ms. McFarland, is that what you found when you were auditing those files?
It's not consistent with the data. Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't believe that's what Cowan found,
And-
Cowden, rather.
Yeah, the Cowan, yeah.
Hal didn't nurse them.
So, PD, all I can tell you is that we've got the data here going all the way back to 1990, and it is the exact opposite of what you're telling us. Until 2006, and in 2006, the gentleman who retired August 1st, 2006, his low five was 88,500, and his high five got replaced to 115,500. So he ended up getting $28,000 additional on his average of his high five, which equated to $45,360 in additional benefits. That was the first one. So I don't know what happened 40 years ago. All I know is what we got in front of us.
I would love to sit down with Chris and review this data,
It's public record. You're welcome to look at any of it.
because we don't have the files anymore.
All right, so can we get back to what are we gonna do about January 1st? Because really, I need to make sure we're on, because the conversations I think that we've had is still, we gotta get that figured out ultimately. Am I on track with that? 'Cause,
January 1
I mean, what happened 30 years ago or
I think
4
he's
years
talking
ago?
about
We're clearly not gonna get that figured out today, because I'm looking at it, it looks pretty
So are
straightforward.
you talking about on the July 20 for
I just
the,
want to make sure that whatever we're deciding on our amendment, that amendment is going to allow, is going to
PD, you
allow
have a
us
seat.
to
I'd
go,
let Adam.
is going
Thank
to
you.
allow us to include July 1st of 2019 to June 30th of 2020, that will be included in everybody's high five, but that their January 1st raise will not be. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, from a council and joint pension committee meeting standpoint, does everybody agree that because it sounded like you said you agreed that's the way it should be, but I know we've also had discussions that sound like January raises should have been included. So, what do y'all think should be there? Should it be July 1st of 2019, or should it be what your pay was, not on the first day of the plan year, but the last few months of the plan year after you got your January raise? Which do you think it should be? Maybe Lori, I'm not asking what you want it to be.
No.
We all want it to be a higher number, but we're already veered off the plan document already just to get it to July 1st, 2019. So, did you expect it, and were employees told that it should
Yes,
include the
and I
January?
want to say that's why there were 7 employees that were retiring, and when Guyton asked for the actuarial study for this 2019-2020 year, the salaries that were included were the July 1st, 2020, June 30th is what we included.
So when he calculated it incorrectly with the January raises included, how did he have those numbers?
He sent a census for me to fill out with July 1st, 2020 data.
I've seen the census.
July 1st of 2020 data,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't have mattered because it didn't have 1,000 hours.
Right. Well, historically, what happened, and I've seen both the census reports that First PD and then Lori would submit to the actuary. And then also, I have seen Michael Guyton's spreadsheet that had a column for every, what someone was making on July 1st of every year. What seems to me is that at the beginning of a plan year, there would come in a request for what is someone making on the first day of the plan year, which would be July 1st. And that might equate to what the raise that they got on January 1st.
Right.
The problem is so that column gets reported, gets added to a spreadsheet, but at no point, and I don't know whose responsibility it is, it appears that no one was checking to see whether there was, if 1,000 hours worked, include this last column. If less than 1,000 hours, move back a space and count the previous 4. And that's
Basic. I mean,
that's what,
Adam, I've got a question, because I chaired the pension board for several years, and I feel a little embarrassed sitting up here listening to all this. Every single year, I don't remember ever having a debate of how are we going to administer the plan this year. I don't think our board ever said, well, let's do it this way this year and let's do it this way next year. Every year, we hired an auditor to audit our pension.
yeah.
And I'm a little confused when I'm sitting here looking at how it was done multiple different ways. Why in the world did we not pick this up on the audit? Adam or Chris, do either one of y'all have enough information to understand why the audit would not have included this information and why it wouldn't have been reviewed? Because it certainly would have been a major factor in us making sure that we're funding the plan appropriately.
I would think with 2, 3, 4, 5 retirees per year, it would have been easy for an auditor to audit every individual. It's not that like this was a plan who retired in a given year. It's not like this was a plan that had, 10,000 participants.
I would like to say this one thing. So the 7 people that were actively working that were immediately eligible to retire, the data separation that Michael Guyton was given was 7/1/2020, and so when those pension packets came back to Lori, they included a 7/1/2020 plan year. When I told Michael Guyton I need a pension packet, the data separation is 6/30, they came back correct.
Yeah, and the data separation was 6:30.
Yes, and they came back to me correct. I didn't coach them or ask them, or they just came back correct.
So Michael Guyton was given information that it was 7/1 was a separation date.
So who would have given that 7/1 date?
I don't know.
I filled out the spreadsheet as of July 1st, 2020, with those dates on it.
Even though MED wasn't in existence in 7/1/2020?
The same salary was as of June 30th, so I guess my answer to Rick is, the employees of Murfreesboro Electric worked the 2,080 hours of that pension year, and they would expect that they would have that salary as of their high 5.
Now, the
the salary as of July 1st of 2019.
right.
2020.
No.
They didn't work 2,000 hours in
You didn't-
2020.
The plan year, though, they completed it.
Even if we would have made the plan, even if we would have sold the department on July 1st of 2020, which has been this whole argument of, if you'd done this versus this, am I understanding this correctly? If the date would have been July 1st of 2020, they would still have not qualified for
Right.
their July 1st of 2020 salary because they had not worked 1,000 hours in that plan year. Is that not correct?
That's correct, under the
That is
way the
correct.
plan's written.
So, there is no difference in,
But that's not the way it's been figured by Guyton.
it has been figured that way some, and it hasn't been figured that way some based on what our, and so forget about trying to figure out why, we're never gonna figure out why it was done for some people and it wasn't done for other people. But the point of the matter is, here's the deal, the plan document is what rules this. It has nothing to do with us or what we think or any of that unless we go change the plan document. We can change it with what's been given here, but to give people January 1st date, or to give people credit for a year in which they didn't work 1,000 hours, that means we have to go back through everybody who had retired and decide that it doesn't matter if they worked 1,000 hours in that, whatever their last pay raise was, it wouldn't matter. We gotta go back and pay them all up for it to be consistent for everybody who's under the plan. Does anybody think that's a good idea?
No.
But everybody, if you retired on August 1st, your rate of July 1st, if it was that raise in June, was included.
It shouldn't have been, because you didn't have 1,000 hours. This is the whole point.
Yeah.
And it's not the way it's always been. It's only been that way since 2005.
No, 2017.
Yeah, really.
Whatever.
2007.
It's just not always been that way. And I heard that argument months ago that it was gonna be that way. Look, I'm saying this stuff like I know. I'm asking also to make sure this is all correct.
Correct.
So,
So what's the consequences? So if we change the plan to fix the way that it was done incorrectly, that means that July 1st is that calendar year, and then if you retire, you work the 1,000 hours, you get to include that includes in that calendar year, that includes in your retirement. But, so we're going back now, and the fix is to show the way it's been done really for the last 2 years. We're fixing, plus a few others, so we're fixing that.
And so basically what the amendment does is that it says in your the plan year in which you retire, you did not have to work 1,000 hours. So that's it. If you just have to get to July 1st, July 2nd, and that's the
We're waiving that.
that's the easiest way to get the plan back so that the plan language and past administration align without going back and asking beneficiaries to pay back money that they weren't entitled to because their benefit had been calculated in a manner that was inconsistent with the plan language, or ponying up $460,000 right now to put the plan back in the place it would have been today, but for the overpayment of benefits.
So does this open us up for, like Rick's saying, going back all these years, if we make this amendment, are we gonna have to go back and make some of these other people right that were administered correctly, but now are not administered correctly?
In the pension plan, within the pension plan, I don't see there's a way to do it in the pension plan while trying to treat everyone in the pension plan the same. Every one of these issues, where you have, with this amendment, everyone who is a current beneficiary will have had their benefit calculated in accordance with the plan document, except for a few one-offs, and those are because of other technical errors not related to this issue that we're talking about.
So if we make this amendment, there's not anybody that's already retired that this amendment would change their benefits.
That's correct.
It's because they did work the 1,000 hours.
Yeah,
they
So
did.
Yeah.
they get, so the difference is, look, you look back through here in the previous years, here's a May 31st.
Which number are you looking at, Rick?
Just starting at number 1, May 31st, and go down through there, April 28th, April 27th, May 15th, April 30th. All of those people, if they would have known, hey, we're going to treat this differently,
They could have been doing
20 years from now, 30 years from now, all I got to do is work a little bit extra, and I could get a higher high five number if I just work 6 more weeks or 8 more weeks. And so it may be that they qualify, that we don't have to go back and change them because technically they worked 1,000 hours, but the fact of the matter is they didn't have to. They could have retired up to 5.5 months earlier, and because not having to work their 1,000 hours. But we treated everybody like that. They had to work their 1,000 hours for this whole time. So, look, I mean, to really make sure I'm accurate on this, okay? To make sure that if we just said, you know what, we want to do what the plan document says.
Yep.
If we just said, you know what, as a body, all, that body, this body says, we just want to do what the plan document says. In order to keep our IRS status right, we're going to need to go back and get benefits back from all of these people that are highlighted in this gray or whatever color this is, going back to 2006. So 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18 people.
We would have to go back and
Tell
get
them-
about $460,000, and what money they didn't or couldn't pay back, the city as the plan sponsor would have to put into the plan. And Chris whispered back to me an additional point, is not only do you have to claw back that money, but it also means reduced benefits going forward.
Yeah.
And what that,
Correct, benefits
what,
going forward.
and what, in the present value of that, in terms of reduced benefits, is $967,000.
That's what you're.
That was what I was.
So that's where, yeah. So that's the same amount that this plan amendment reduces the funding status. It reduces the funding status by $967,000 with this plan amendment. If you don't do this plan amendment, you've got to reduce future benefits by a present value of $967,000.
Or write a check.
Or write a check.
Oh.
No.
We have to,
You can,
because we'd have to treat everybody.
Yeah,
consistently.
and those beneficiaries would have already been taxed on that money that they would be paying back.
yep.
So I don't think and I can't speak for everyone, but I would say that's probably not an option that would be a good option to go back.
We didn't think it was a good option. It's why we're not recommending it.
I'm not convinced that treating everybody prior to that in a different way is a good option either. I mean, all these people that retire right up before, I mean, that's not a good thing for them either. And they're still getting benefits.
May I ask a question? We were provided the last pension meeting, this report here, and the city paid for it. It's quite a bit of money, $60,000, whatever the amount was. And nowhere in here does it address these issues, and I wasn't involved, but I know Daphne and Gina and all, they provided all these records to this company to look over these files. And, it says in general, past administrative practices for calculating years of service and accrued benefits conform to the plan document. What's happened between this and now?
No, that report addresses the
Here, correct.
the errors that were made. Yeah, that report addresses the error that were made in the past administration.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what part of it you're reading in there, but if under findings, the second paragraph under findings, past administrative practice for calculating average monthly compensation, including basic rate of pay in effect in the plan year, regardless if an employee worked one day or at least 1,000 hours. So it identified the issue that we've had to make the correction for.
Cowden was tasked to figure out, we were aware that there were inconsistencies in the way benefits were calculated. And Cowden was given a very narrow task, and that was ultimately when we discovered that there had been inconsistencies in the way benefits had calculated, it raised the specter that beneficiaries had been treated differently and in a manner not in accordance with the plan language, which again raises qualified status.
It brought up 5 instances, if I remember correctly, and we discussed them in the pension.
No, those are different. Those are one-off situations. Those are not what we're talking about here.
Are those administrative errors?
Those are the administrative errors. And so what Cowden's task was to go back and look at how each current beneficiaries and deferred vested beneficiaries' benefit had been calculated, determine what happened, what was included in their high five and what was not, and then to come back to us in consultation with Andy Elbon, a pension attorney with the law firm Bradley, as to the language that would bring language for a plan amendment that would bring the plan back into alignment with or into compliance with the IRS regulations. It was a very narrow task. It was not focused on why things happened. It was focused on what happened, and based on what happened, what we needed to do from a legal standpoint to maintain qualified status. That was all that their focus was. So it was HR's kind of questioning when they noted some issues back last summer that led us to hire outside legal counsel and an outside actuary.
Let me just make a couple of statements. I think it's good for us to kind of go back and look back a little bit and examine when something could have been done better. Let's put it that way. But I think going forward, the way to get out of the kind of rut I think we're stuck in is what happens when these amendments, we pass these amendments, and what happens when we don't, or if we don't. Because we're going to have to take some action. And, can we distill all of the conversation down to what happens when we pass these amendments, or if this is appropriate, and what happens if we don't?
Well, with respect to the First Amendment, I would say that there shouldn't be any controversy to that one at all, because it's basically just saying city is now city government as opposed to the MED and Power Board is administering the plan. With respect to the second one, if we don't amend it, well, first of all, if we amend it, it's outside counsel's recommendation that we submit the plan as amended for a determination to the IRS for a determination letter stating that this plan amendment corrects, brings the plan language into line with past practices, and that the plan has retained its qualified status under the Internal Revenue Code. If we don't make this plan amendment, we either have to come up with some other amendment that, involves clawing back money and reducing benefits going forward, or we risk having a determination by the IRS that the plan is no longer qualified, and having with significant tax consequences both for the city and for beneficiaries. And I can't quantify what that number is, but it would be, there is a not insignificant number associated with that.
Mr. Tucker, is there a chance that if we pass this Second Amendment and send it to the IRS that they don't approve it?
There is always that chance, yes. But this is a recommendation of, this plan language was drafted by an attorney who specializes in pension plans and works with public and private clients trying to address issues where past practice has deviated from the plan and trying to correct it.
Is there a dollar figure tied to any of these? We're voting on amendments to the pension plan. Does it require dollars, us to find money somewhere?
To make this amendment and to submit it to the IRS?
Yes.
I think we can pay that out of legal and money that you've already.
Well, I'm sorry, the bigger consequences to this. We had discussion, the $460,000, and what are we talking about? Is there a price tag to these amendments?
No, there's not. The only price to pay is that there's a $967,000 reduction in the
Fund balance.
fund balance. So it increases the funding liabilities of the pension plan by $967,000. It does not require the city to stroke a check or require a council to approve.
I think the answer
spending.
is, I think the answer, Bill, and we got into this a little bit, but is based on the fact that it is fully funded. It's already been funded and overfunded based on what percent return you want to plug into that, right? So if we plug in the current, we've got this overfunded position that's there. So we shouldn't have to come up with money to pay for this extra $967,000 because it's already overfunded by at least that much.
Right. And
based on current estimates and assumptions. So there's not like a price tag to it now. There could be a price tag to it in terms of if we don't earn the rate of return over the next 30 years that's estimated, and we end up not being overfunded, somebody way down the road might have to fund it because we're paying out more than what the plan said, and we ran out of money because it didn't earn 7% per year. See what I'm saying? So it's not that we have to come up with a check now, it would be at the very end of it would be when the plan runs out of money that we would ever have to pay anything for now paying this $460,000 in present value or $967,000 in future value.
So, Councilman Shacklet, when we looked at it from a pension committee standpoint, the plan was overfunded, and I don't remember the exact numbers. Adam, do you remember?
Yeah, I've got them right here.
Yeah.
So and these numbers are somewhat dated because this Cowden produced this report based on October 31st, 2020 valuations. But the market value of the plan assets as of that date were $28.124 million. The funding liability was $22.267 million. So that gave a funded ratio of 126%. With making this amendment, the funding liabilities go from that 22.3 million to 23.2 million, and the funded ratio drops from 126 to 121%. So that's
That's wonderful information. I wish I'd have been able to find it in the documents. But, so, the retirees are not going to see any significant change in their retirement.
the current retirees, with the exception of 2 people who I believe will be addressed outside of the plan.
Okay.
No beneficiaries will see, with this plan amendment, will see a reduction in their current benefits.
I want to make sure we're all square on this, though, when we go to start, if we're going to vote on it tonight, and I don't care if we do or not. Everybody needs to chew on this, whatever, I'm good with whatever, but this still doesn't fix the January pay raise issue. This amendment just gets us to going to July 1st of 2019. It doesn't change anything about I keep saying, the first half of 2020 pay being included in their high five. None of this changes any of that. Okay, so in terms of it doesn't reduce anybody's benefit, it doesn't reduce anybody's benefit, but it certainly reduces what some expectations, I think, were from some employees.
Lori, do we know why why were the,
You know what I mean?
yeah, so if we work off of a calendar, our budget year used to be August, right? MED used to have an August to July budget year.
Pension.
No, budget year. At one point, it was August August pension. But we've always been, the MED's always had the same budget the city of Murfreesboro has.
Yes.
Dates. Why was the budget approved July 1 and raises given in January on the calendar year and not the budget year?
We included 6 months of it in the prior, because the raises were done on January 1st. When we did the budget, we did 6 months at the one rate, and we did 6 months at a different
I
rate.
think
Why is the raise?
I'm just saying, why is, with our employees,
The budget year is
the budget year is the calendar year that we work off of. So when we vote to give somebody a raise, they get that raise July 1st, their pay changes. So when did it change that the board would agree to give raises in the budget year, and then we held out raises until January 1? Do we know why that ever happened?
I was on the board in 14, and since I was on the board in 14, it's always been that way.
Yeah.
And it was that way prior to 2014. so.
At one point, the union employees' raises were on January 1st, and the non-union was the July 1st, and then it was changed for them to all be January 1st.
When it was like that, did the union employees get the January 1st included on their high five if they retired, or was there enough of that to happen? Do we know if that was any different?
Plan language is
part of
the
what-
same. Plan language would still be the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're in the plan, so
Yeah.
they didn't have a separate plan for
Yeah.
union.
somebody would have been calculating it incorrectly if they would
That
have had
issue
that.
really occurs every year. Every plan year, employees have received that raise in January, but they don't, it doesn't change what they received on July 1 or what they were receiving for that
Right.
plan year. So really, it doesn't matter if it's the last year or the first year, they're all being handled the same. And so it just so happens there came a sale. You know, it just so happens, everybody has a final plan year.
But I want to make sure that
Yeah.
it wouldn't have mattered if we had closed it August 1st
Yeah.
or July 1st or September. The only date that would have changed if we had waited until December 31st, 2019 to close, then that 1,000 hours would have accumulated and that would have changed.
Yeah, 2020.
Okay.
One thing, can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sitting here, my head is really spinning here. I think I understand it, then something else comes up. Things like, and this is just, well, first of all, information has come out tonight, and it may be just me, that I had never heard of, you know, some information. So that's good that we're getting the whole picture of everything. But it seems to me that we are putting, or either jumping on or whatever, everything on Ms. Williams. But in hearing her, she gives the information to the auditor, and the auditor actually figures everything. My question is, when that is, they have to present that to us as a city, right, once it's completed? Like
Chris?
their office
Yeah.
and everything?
Chris, why don't you talk about, Madeline, I think I can get that answered.
Okay.
Chris, why don't you, how long has Guyton been handling the city's pension?
I've been here since 99 for the city. He was, well, it was a different player, the same company. Yeah,
Have we
the
ever had
gentleman, Jody Johnson before he retired, and then Michael Guyton.
Have we ever had an issue with Guyton on the way that our pension's been figured?
No, I do the calculations. Sherry Carpenter did the calculations, and then when Sue became the personnel director, that's when I started doing them.
Yeah, Madeline, I don't know.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. You all were referencing 2 employees. Were their benefits dropped? I mean, I don't know the 2 employees. I don't know who they are. It doesn't matter. But, you know, I know you said the others were not going to be affected by it, but there would possibly be 2 employees. Would their benefits drop or be less?
Adam?
There are two employees whose benefit would decrease. One, because the retiree was credited with 1 too many years of service, and the other one was would see a benefit decrease, and that was the wrong value was used in calculating the average monthly compensation, but the way that the wrong value was used in calculating average monthly compensation was a different error than what we've been talking about here. And these are, and I believe that one is pretty dated in terms of when that error occurred.
Are they current retirees, just for her? I mean, are they already retired, both of those 2, or are they?
Those 2 are retired.
Okay.
And we've discussed other solutions.
Right.
Oh, Adam, roughly, dollar amount, just to round off, what roughly are we talking about a reduction? Couple of hundred dollars, a couple of thousand, or what are we talking about?
One would be $34 a month, and the other one would be about $111 a month.
Okay. Last question. Based on this, I'm going to use this word lightly, Ms. How open is the city for lawsuits?
I don't think I want to answer that question. I mean, it depends. I would say the primary legal issue here is not a lawsuit. The primary legal issue here is maintaining the plan's compliance with IRS regulations.
Which in turn,
And it's my legal recommendation that that should be the focus of city council.
Okay.
And I think most of us, we're probably fear lawyers a whole lot less than we fear the IRS. So,
It's nice to know that there's someone lower than me.
yeah.
I thought you might take offense to that.
So we need to consider Amendment 1. I mean,
Let me ask one,
Yes,
before
sir.
we get to voting on
Yeah.
amendment. The question that Rick raised about the date, are these bodies, I mean, obviously, we have an interpretation one way, and we have an interpretation another way. And can these bodies just say what that, I mean, are we going to comply with what we have said, the language of the plan is? I mean, it seems like you need some clarification going forward. The only way, who can make that decision as to what is the proper way to look at those dates? Because, I mean, are we going to leave that up in the air, vote on the amendments and leave that up in the air? Or are we going to say, our recommendation is to interpret it this way?
Well, are you talking about the January 1st, 2020, July 1st, 2020 issue? Are you talking about?
So here, let me see if this is correct, and this may be a Chris thing here, but Adam, so the only way that I think that we can include the January through July 2020 pay numbers in the high five calculations would be to amend this plan document to say you didn't even have to work in the year that we're giving. That you didn't even have to work in the year. That was not even a year that existed, which means then we got to go back to everybody and change that for everybody, whatever their next year would have been. Okay? So from a plan document, plan amendment standpoint, the only way to get it is to get it to July 1st of 2019. Now, if somebody on this, at this table anywhere, I mean, I think the only answer, and this may not, I mean, this is what it is, so I'm just gonna say it. I mean, if you think that based on everything that you read from here and you wanna take this and chew on it, and maybe we come back next Thursday night and somebody brings up another business, that we wanna write a check to every employee that is currently a participant to make up for the difference that they would have gotten, you do it outside of the plan document. So if you say, all right, well, look, I'm not satisfied with doing it like the plan says, or even as the plan amendment says, that I want that person to get paid as if they worked in a year that they didn't even work, which was to get their January 1st of 2020 to June 30th of 2020, that we would then calculate for each of those 36 people what the present value of that difference in their high five would be and write them a check. I think that's the only way that you fix it without, because you can't do it within the plan document. I think it's basically impossible to fix the January 1st pay number. So then I think everybody then has to decide if you want to bring up, we're going to write people a check for the difference outside of the plan.
So, Mr. LaLance.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at you on TV too, and your lips are still moving, so I get a delay. I apologize.
It's delayed, I'm sure.
Same thing.
Yeah, it is delayed. I was saying that because I did not want to interrupt you before I said
No,
something.
that's fine. What you got?
So what you just said, in that way, we will be making everybody whole. Is that correct?
Well, not really, I don't think, because we didn't pay everybody before 2005 that way. We didn't pay some of the people after 2005 that way. And so now you got to decide, if you write people a check now, do we go back and write everybody who's ever been in the plan who didn't get treated that way a check?
Yeah, the number's $904,000 that would be for, if we decided that we wanted, in my opinion, to
write checks for the present value?
Yeah, look, I'll say this. $904,000, it's almost like rewarding a bad mistake that was made. You know, it's like you have employees who you say, you're doing it wrong, we're going to give you $1 million though because you did it wrong. And I don't.
Those people that are accepting that benefit didn't necessarily do it wrong.
No.
So they don't,
Yeah.
they're not culpable in the.
No, I agree. That's
The retirees.
the retire, yeah. Well,
Does that 904 include the people that Mr. LaLance is talking about?
No.
no.
Yeah, so that,
Yeah, I mean, you're talking
I'm just talking about this is a number provided by Cowden. It's just the 43 people who were participants in the plan and employed by MED on June 30th, 2020.
yeah, so we're not even really talking necessarily about retirees. We're talking about
Funding of.
funding the participants. So I don't mind having the discussion, you know, that's a lot of money. I don't mind having the discussion on rank and file, but I'll say this, there ain't no way that I'm approving management getting part of that money when we're sitting here because of those decisions. I won't vote for that.
So I'd be okay. I think, what I just said a minute ago, I'm really just saying this stuff out loud because I'm trying to brainstorm here and think through whether or not it all is even correct and makes sense. I mean, honestly. So the idea of no other real amendment being able to be made to quote unquote make whole. I mean, I'm gonna tell you right now, if a discussion does come up about writing checks, the way that I'm gonna get to that point is to talk about making whole, which means we're gonna offset whatever that check is by whatever benefit they got in the new pension and all that. If you wanna just call it same, I'll have that discussion potentially. But as far as amendments go, there's really no other way to amend this thing to deal with the January raise deal without it just being a complete giant mess.
There's no way within the plan. The employees terminated, separated from MED on the 30th of June. And they started in a new pension plan on July the 1st at MED. So they're outside the plan. There's no way to bring them back in the plan. MED didn't exist. The pension plan closed off on that date. Their dates of separation followed with the Tennessee Department of Labor show 6/30 is the separation date from MED. So there's no way to amend the plan to put people in there that didn't work for MED at that time.
Without changing it to something into a year that was never worked, right? I mean,
Yeah, and they were never employed.
Yeah, okay. Well,
So if we approve these amendments, does this group go away? Or is your job done and you move, or is there?
No. We would, the committee continues to manage the plan, just like the pension committee for the city manages the
So
plan.
they'll continue, and we'll audit through our people, our audit firm will continue to audit that.
We will.
Under the words of the plan as we have amended it.
That's
So,
correct. Yes,
clarifications that we have added.
Yeah.
So I mean, really, listening to Rick, there's not much of an option but to amend the plan, correct? I mean, we can talk about, I mean, there are no options. We amend the plan to the way it's been paid, or we go back to 1990 and start redoing the plan again. And then who knows? I mean, the part about that is that ends up hurting the MED employee as a whole, because we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that plan is whole for all the people who've retired. And that's the overriding factor, to make sure that the people who are retiring and the people who have retired have money in their plan, that their checks keep coming. So
Has that board, you have voted on these amendments? And-
Yes.
Yeah, that was, Councilman Shacklet, that was exactly my thoughts. We didn't have any other options. We didn't feel like we could claw back money. It creates tremendous tax issues for those folks that are getting money clawed back. It certainly wasn't an ideal situation. I agree. You feel bad for folks that, couldn't have taken advantage of this, but unfortunately, I didn't see a win-win in that situation. And, at the end of the day, you drop from 126% overfunded to 121 with that amendment. It's not, you wish it was higher. I think that calculation is based on a 7% return. If we get less than a 7% return, then we are not funded at the same percentage. So, you know, I think ultimately, if it becomes a city plan like we're talking about tonight, and it's not fully funded, then council will have to determine how they were going to fund that. And
Ross, what was the vote count? Or did anybody vote against it?
I think was it 3-5?
3-5. 3-2.
Excuse me, 3-2. Excuse me. 5 votes total,
Mr.
3-2.
Williams and Mr. Whitaker voted against it.
Why did y'all vote against it, Gary? Or not Gary, but Jackie? Sorry. Nope.
I don't know how to take that.
Yeah.
No. Well, we were wanting to try, this is all going by here at 100 miles an hour. We were looking at trying to get credit for that last year, and it apparently depends on how you determine that last year. And we were wanting that to be included in the discussion.
So the July 1st, 2020.
We're not,
Wanted to-
it depends. I was under the assumption that July 1st of 2020 counted back before, and what you were making that day was what you got for the plan year. That was my assumption. That's what I thought. And Adam and I had conversations on that, and that's what he thought.
And that's the way it was operating. But that's not what the plan language said.
I mean, I think that's really the issue here, is this is what I've heard for all these years versus this is really what the plan document has said. I mean, I gave an example to somebody in this discussion that, if you work in HR and you've been calculating payroll for everybody, and you get to September and you realize that you hadn't been holding out enough FICA taxes, there ain't no option.
Yeah.
You didn't tell me that you were gonna take out more FICA taxes, I mean, I should have this reasonable expectation that you're only gonna take out this. I mean, you gotta go take it out, or the IRS is gonna blow you up. It's the same in this. You gotta go by the plan document, or the IRS is gonna blow you up, no matter what was being said around the office, or no matter what you thought you were gonna get. The IRS is gonna blow it up if you give people credit for working 1 minute or 1 hour or 50 hours or 500 hours in a plan year that you didn't work 1,000. It doesn't count.
I understand it. Like I said, it was a miss, because we had the conversation in March.
I'm not fussing at you.
I'm just saying,
Yeah, I get it.
and that's
and I
why we
wasn't
were
trying
so
to fuss
adamant
you
about
about
getting
it.
the
I was
last year.
So are Gary or
I didn't
Jackie?
mean that to be fussing at you, Jackie.
No, I
meant
understand.
Just from a standpoint of, there's just this big difference between kind of what has been being said and what's being done versus what's legal, IRS-wise legal. And
Do we need a motion to vote on these
I think we need the First Amendment, we need a motion for that, and then the Second Amendment is actually changing to the July, it's fixing the fix, is the way I would.
It's bringing the plan language into alignment with past administrative practice of the plan.
Yeah.
Ms. Scales-Harris, you out there?
I am.
Since you're not right here with us, before any motions are made, do you have any more questions or anything?
No, I don't.
Okay.
All right, do we have a motion on Amendment 1 for the pension plan?
I'll
So moved.
Second.
That's a motion, a second. Is it Ms. Wright or Ms. Brown that's going to call it? Ms. Brown, will you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we now need to consider proposed amendment number 2 to the MED pension plan.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Is there any other business for each boards? We can't consider any other business because it's all it's advertised for, but does anybody have anything else they want to say?
No.
I will share with you that I'll be sending a funding agreement that we also passed as a board in July of 2020, and it'll come at the next council meeting.
I have one last question. As we've talked about this, and I know Ronnie had mentioned this, Pam, Chris, Melissa, as far as the 1,000 employees that work for the city, is our we've looked at our audit, do we feel comfortable that we're managing our pension the way it's supposed to be managed?
Yes.
Okay. We can all sleep
One
better, sleep better at night. We'll stand adjourned.
Again,
Thought Madeline was trying to say something.
She'll start.